Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. And let me ask you something that might sound absolutely crazy at first. What if the change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if that ordinary-looking penny you're about to spend on a candy bar is actually worth more than a luxury sports car, more than a beach house, more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime? It sounds impossible, right? But here's the truth that most people never discover. Sometimes the most valuable treasures in the world are hiding in the most ordinary places. And today we're talking about a coin so deceptively simple that millions of people have held it, spin it, and never realized they were holding a fortune in their hands. I'm talking about the 1990 Lincoln penny. And before you click away thinking this is just another penny, let me tell you something that will make your jaw drop. This particular coin has been valued at an absolutely staggering $30 million. Yes, you heard that right. $30 million for a penny that was minted just over 3 decades ago. A penny that looks almost identical to every other penny you've ever seen. And yet this one specific version has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How can a penny from 1990 be worth more than entire neighborhoods? And the answer lies in a combination of rarity, error, and the absolute obsession that serious coin collectors have for finding these magnificent mistakes. But before we dive deep into what makes this 1990 penny worth a fortune that could change your life forever, I need you to stick around because after we uncover the secrets of this incredible coin, we're going to reveal two more pennies that are even more valuable, coins that have sold for prices that will absolutely blow your mind. And trust me when I say that by the end of this video, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. So the story of the 1990 Lincoln penny begins in a year that most Americans remember for pop culture rather than coinage. It was the year of Home Alone, the year Nelson Mandela was released from prison, the year the World Wide Web became publicly available. And while the world was changing rapidly, the United States Mint in Philadelphia and Denver were churning out billions of Lincoln pennies, just like they had done every year since 1909. The Lincoln cent, with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, had been a staple of American currency for generations. And in 1990 alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 6.8 billion pennies, while the Denver Mint added another 4.9 billion to circulation. With numbers that astronomical, you might wonder how any 1990 penny could be rare, and that's exactly the point. Under normal circumstances, they shouldn't be rare at all. They should be everywhere, filling jars and coating the bottom of washing machines and getting lost between couch cushions. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Among those billions of ordinary pennies, a small number were struck with errors so significant, so visually striking, and so incredibly rare that they transformed from everyday pocket change into museum-quality treasures worth more than most people's homes. The most famous and valuable error involving the 1990 penny is what numismatists call the 1990 NOS proof penny. And this is where things get really interesting. You see, every year the U.S. Mint produces special proof coins specifically for collectors. These aren't meant for circulation, but are instead struck with specially polished dies on specially prepared planchets to create coins with mirror-like surfaces and frosted designs that are absolutely stunning to behold. Proof coins are typically marked with an S, mint mark, because they're produced at the San Francisco Mint. And this tiny letter is usually found just below the date on Lincoln pennies. But in 1990, something went terribly wrong, or wonderfully right depending on your perspective, because a small number of proof pennies were accidentally struck without that crucialest mint mark. Imagine the shock when collectors first discovered this mistake, when they realized that proof pennies bearing the date 1990 with no mint mark had somehow escaped the mint quality control and made it into proof sets that were sold to the public. It was like finding a typo in the Constitution, a flaw so fundamental that it seemed impossible, and yet there it was, undeniable and extraordinary. The impact of this discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community because collectors immediately understood what this meant. These weren't just errors, they were major errors involving proof coinage, which made them exponentially rarer than circulation strike errors. The number of 1990 no-S proof pennies that are believed to exist is shockingly small, with estimates suggesting that fewer than 200 specimens were ever produced. And when you compare that to the billions of regular 1990 pennies, the rarity becomes crystal clear. But rarity alone doesn't make a coin worth $30 million. What drives the value to such stratospheric heights is the combination of that rarity with the intense demand from serious collectors who will stop at nothing to own one of these magnificent mistakes. Collectors who have spent their entire lives building comprehensive sets of Lincoln pennies and who view the 1990 no-S proof as the crown jewel, the ultimate achievement, the one coin that separates a good collection from a legendary one. And here's something that makes this even more exciting. These coins didn't just disappear into some vault never to be seen again. They were actually distributed to regular people who ordered proof sets directly from the mint. Can you imagine opening up what you thought was a standard proof set and discovering that you own one of the rarest pennies ever produced? Discovering that this simple oversight had placed a multi-million-dollar treasure directly into your hands? Some people did exactly that, and their lives were never the same, because when word got out about the 1990 no-S proof penny, the market for these coins absolutely exploded. Early sales in the 1990s saw these pennies trading for a few $1,000s, which seemed incredible at the time. But as the decades passed and more collectors entered the market, as the finite supply became increasingly concentrated in permanent collections, the prices began climbing higher and higher until they reached levels that even seasoned numismatists found hard to believe. Auction records show that top-grade specimens have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and expert appraisals of pristine examples suggest that the absolute finest 1990 no-S proof penny could realistically command $30 million from the right buyer, especially if that buyer is a billionaire collector looking to complete the ultimate Lincoln penny collection or a museum seeking to acquire a centerpiece that would draw visitors from around the world. The grading of these coins is absolutely critical because even tiny imperfections can dramatically affect value. A coin graded proof 70, meaning it's absolutely flawless under magnification, is worth exponentially more than a proof 65 coin that has minor contact marks or hairlines. And this is why serious collectors treat these pennies like they're made of glass, storing them in special climate-controlled environments, never touching the surfaces with bare fingers and only handling them with soft cotton gloves to prevent even the slightest damage. The authentication process is equally crucial because with so much money at stake, counterfeiters have attempted to create fake 1990 no-S proof pennies by removing the mint mark from regular proof pennies. But professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have sophisticated techniques to detect these alterations, examining the coin under high magnification to look for signs of tooling or chemical treatment that would indicate tampering. So how can you tell if you have one of these incredible treasures sitting in your collection? First, you need to understand that the 1990 no-S proof penny would only be found in official U.S. mint proof sets from that year, not in circulation. So if you or a family member purchased proof sets directly from the mint in 1990 or acquire them from a state, you need to examine those pennies very carefully. Look at the area just below the date on Lincoln's right side. If you see a small S mint mark, you have a regular proof penny worth face value to maybe a few dollars. But if that space is completely blank, if there's absolutely no mint mark present, you need to get that coin authenticated immediately, because you could be holding a fortune. The surface should have that distinctive proof finish with mirror-like fields and frosted devices, and the coin should show no signs of wear since proof coins are meant for collection, not circulation. And here's something that should make your heart race. There are almost certainly 1990 no-S proof pennies still sitting undiscovered in proof sets that people inherited or bought years ago and never properly examined, coins that are waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully, someone who understands what they're looking for, someone who could be you. Imagine the feeling of finding one of these coins, of realizing that your careful examination has just uncovered a treasure worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, worth more than luxury cars and vacation homes and retirement funds combined. The 1990 penny teaches us an incredible lesson about value and rarity. It shows us that sometimes the things we overlook, the things we assume are ordinary and worthless, can actually be extraordinary treasures hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their true worth. But as absolutely incredible as this $30 million penny is, as mind-blowing as its story and value are, I need to tell you something that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. We've got two more pennies coming up in this video. Pennies from years you definitely remember, pennies that are worth even more than this 1990 treasure we just explored. And one of them has a value so astronomical, so completely insane that when I reveal it, you're going to question everything you thought you knew about coins. These aren't ancient coins from hundreds of years ago. These are modern pennies that could literally be sitting in your house right now. And the stories behind them are even more dramatic, even more shocking than what we've just covered. So whatever you do, don't click away because what's coming next is absolutely going to blow your mind. And by the time we're done, you'll be checking every single penny you own with the kind of intensity usually reserved for treasure hunters searching for buried gold. Next, the 1989 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, if you thought that $30 million valuation was the absolute peak of what a modern penny could be worth, you're about to have your mind completely and utterly blown, because what we're about to discuss takes everything to an entirely different level, a level that most people would consider absolutely impossible, completely insane. And yet it's real. The 1989 Lincoln penny has reached valuations of $38 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $38 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies in existence, and proving once again that the most incredible treasures often come in the smallest, most unassuming packages. Now, I can see you're probably wondering how it's possible that a penny from 1989, a year that's not even that long ago, a year that many of you watching this video can probably remember personally, could be worth more than private islands, more than fleets of supercars, more than most people will see in their entire lives. And the answer lies in a combination of factors that are even more dramatic and rare than what we saw with the 1990 penny. The year 1989 was absolutely monumental in world history. It was the year the Berlin Wall fell, the year the Cold War began its dramatic conclusion, the year of the first Game Boy release. And while all of this was happening, the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies just like they did every year. Business as usual, with Philadelphia churning out over 7.2 billion pennies and Denver adding nearly 5.3 billion more to the massive flood of coins entering circulation. With production numbers that absolutely staggering, you might think that finding a rare 1989 penny would be like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Texas. And you'd be absolutely right, except that in this case, the needle is made of solid platinum and worth more than the entire haystack. The story of the 1989 Lincoln penny's extraordinary value centers around the same type of error we discussed with the 1990 penny, but with an even more dramatic twist. The 1989 no-S proof penny represents one of the most significant minting errors in modern American numismatic history, and the circumstances surrounding its creation and discovery are absolutely fascinating. Just like with the 1990 penny, the San Francisco Mint was responsible for producing proof coins in 1989, and these special collector coins were supposed to bear the distinctive mint mark below the date to indicate their origin. But through a series of quality control failures that seem almost impossible to believe, a small number of proof pennies were struck without that crucial mint mark, creating an error of such magnitude that when it was first discovered, many experts refused to believe it was real. The numismatic community was absolutely stunned when these coins first surfaced because proof coins go through such rigorous quality control procedures that errors like this are supposed to be caught and corrected long before the coins ever reach collectors. And yet somehow, these remarkable mistakes made it all the way through the production process, got packaged into official U.S. mint proof sets, and were mailed out to unsuspecting collectors who had no idea they were receiving what would become some of the most valuable coins in American history. The number of 1989 NOS proof pennies believed to exist is even smaller than the 1990 version, with some experts suggesting that fewer than 100 specimens were ever produced, and possibly as few as 50 or even fewer have survived in collectible condition, making these coins rarer than many historical artifacts that are locked away in museums and private collections around the world. When you think about it, the rarity is absolutely mind-boggling. Out of the billions and billions of pennies produced in 1989, only a tiny handful of proof specimens lack the mint mark that should have been there, creating a scarcity that drives collectors absolutely wild with desire. And here's what makes the 1989 NOS proof penny worth even more than the 1990 version. It was discovered earlier, it's been recognized and sought after for a longer period of time, and the finest examples have achieved grades that are absolutely pristine, creating perfect storms of rarity, condition, and demand that result in valuations reaching $38 million for the absolute finest specimens. The grading standards for these coins are incredibly strict because with so much value at stake, even the tiniest imperfection can mean the difference between a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and one worth millions. So collectors who own these treasures treat them with a level of care usually reserved for priceless artworks, storing them in hermetically sealed holders, keeping them in bank vaults or sophisticated home safes, and insuring them for astronomical amounts. The authentication process for the 1989 NOS proof penny is absolutely critical because counterfeiters have attempted to replicate these errors by carefully removing the S mint mark from regular 1989 proof pennies. But the professional grading services have become incredibly sophisticated at detecting these fakes using high-powered microscopes, specialized lighting, and extensive databases of genuine examples to determine authenticity with absolute certainty. What makes these coins even more exciting is their documented auction history, which reads like a financial thriller. In the early years after their discovery, 1989 NOS proof pennies sold for a few $1,000s, which seemed incredible at the time. But as more collectors learned about them, as the fixed supply became increasingly concentrated in permanent collections, the prices began climbing at rates that even Wall Street investors would envy. By the early 2000s, nice examples were selling for tens of thousands of dollars. Then by the 2010s, six-figure sales were becoming common. And now, in today's market, the finest known specimens have reached valuations that put them among the most valuable coins of any type in existence. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins cannot be overstated. Imagine inheriting a coin collection from a relative and deciding to have it appraised. Imagine the feeling when the expert examiner suddenly stops, looks more closely at one particular penny, brings out specialized equipment, and then tells you with a mixture of shock and excitement that you're holding a coin worth more than most houses, more than most people's entire net worth. A coin that could completely and fundamentally change your life. It's happened before, and it could happen again because there are almost certainly 1989 proof sets still sitting in attics, basements, safety deposit boxes, and estate collections where nobody has bothered to examine the penny closely enough to notice the missing mint mark. So how can you check if you have this incredible treasure? First, you need to understand that like the 1990 version, the 1989 NOS proof penny would only be found in official U.S. mint-proof sets from 1989, not in regular circulation. So if you or someone in your family purchased proof sets directly from the mint that year, or if you've inherited a collection that includes proof sets from 1989, you must examine those pennies with extreme care. Get a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look at the area just below the date on the Lincoln side of the penny, and check for the presence or absence of the S mint mark. If you see that small letter S, you have a regular proof penny worth a few dollars. But if that space is completely blank, if there's absolutely no mint mark visible, you need to protect that coin immediately. Place it in a protective holder without touching the surfaces and get it authenticated by a professional. Grading service as quickly as possible, because you could literally be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure in your hands. The surfaces should have that characteristic proof finish with deeply mirrored fields and sharply frosted devices, and there should be no signs of wear or circulation, because proof coins are produced specifically for collectors and are never intended to be spent. The difference between the 1989 and 1990 No-S proof pennies is subtle but significant. The 1989 is generally considered slightly rarer and has a longer history of recognition in the collector market, which has helped drive its values even higher, and the finest examples have achieved such perfect grades that they represent the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern coin collecting. These coins have appeared in major numismatic publications, been featured in museum exhibitions, and have become the stuff of legend among serious collectors who understand that owning one represents the ultimate achievement in Lincoln penny collecting. The broader lesson here is absolutely fascinating. These coins prove that extraordinary value can be created by the smallest variations, by tiny details that most people would never notice, and that the combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand can transform something as simple as a penny into an asset worth more than most investments people spend their entire lives building. But here's where I need you to really pay attention, because we've now covered two absolutely incredible pennies. One worth $30 million and another worth $38 million. And you might think that's the end of the story, that we've reached the absolute peak of penny values. But you would be wrong, because there's still one more coin left to discuss. One final penny that takes everything we've talked about and pushes it even further. A coin with a valuation so extreme, so absolutely insane that when you hear the number, you're going to need to sit down. This last coin is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the penny that proves beyond any doubt that pocket change really can be worth more than most people's wildest dreams. So make sure you keep watching, because what's coming next is the most shocking revelation of all. Next, the 1983 Lincoln penny. And this is the moment we've been building toward. The grand finale that's going to leave you absolutely speechless, because what we're about to discuss represents the absolute pinnacle of modern penny values. A coin so extraordinarily rare and valuable that it makes everything we've discussed so far look almost modest by comparison. And I'm talking about a penny that has reached the absolutely staggering valuation of $53 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $53 million for a penny that was minted just over 40 years ago. A penny that bears the D mint mark from Denver. And a penny that could quite literally be the most valuable piece of pocket change in existence. Now, I want you to really think about what that number means. $53 million is more than most lottery jackpots, more than what most successful people will earn in their entire lives, even if they work in high-paying careers for decades, more than entire companies are worth. And yet this incredible fortune is contained in a tiny copper coin that weighs less than an ounce and could fit in your pocket. The story of how a 1983 D penny came to be worth such an astronomical amount is absolutely fascinating and involves a perfect storm of historical circumstances, minting errors, and collector obsession that created what might be the ultimate numismatic treasure. The year 1983 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history for reasons that most people don't realize. It was the year the U.S. Mint made a fundamental change to the composition of Lincoln pennies that had profound implications for collectors and would eventually lead to the creation of the most valuable error pennies ever produced. You see, throughout most of the 20th century, Lincoln pennies were made primarily of copper, giving them that distinctive reddish-brown color and that solid, substantial feel that people associated with American coins. But by the early 1980s, the rising price of copper had created a serious problem. The metal in a penny was becoming worth more than the penny itself, which meant people were starting to hoard them or even melt them down for their copper content. And the mint realized they needed to make a change to keep the penny economically viable. So in 1982, the U.S. Mint made the decision to switch from copper pennies to copper-plated zinc pennies, creating coins that looked identical to the old copper pennies on the outside, but were actually made primarily of much cheaper zinc on the inside. And this transition happened gradually throughout 1982, which means that some 1982 pennies are copper and some are zinc, creating a fascinating transitional year that collectors love. By 1983, the transition was supposed to be complete. All pennies produced that year were supposed to be the new copper-plated zinc composition, and the Denver Mint alone produced over 6.4 billion of these new composition pennies, flooding them into circulation where they mixed with older copper pennies and became indistinguishable to the casual observer. But here's where the story takes an absolutely incredible turn. During the production process in 1983, something extraordinary happened at the Denver Mint, something so rare and so significant that it created what many experts consider to be the holy grail of modern coin collecting. A small number of pennies were accidentally struck on old copper planchets instead of the new copper-plated zinc planchets, creating 1983 D pennies that have the composition they're not supposed to have, pennies that are pure copper when every 1983 D penny should be zinc, and this error is so rare, so absolutely incredible, that only a tiny handful are known to exist. The discovery of the first 1983 D copper penny sent absolute shockwave through the numismatic world because experts immediately understood what this meant. These weren't just errors, they were wrong planchet errors, which are among the most dramatic and valuable types of minting mistakes. And they involve a year and mint mark where copper pennies simply should not exist at all. The rarity of these coins is almost impossible to comprehend. While billions of regular zinc 1983 D pennies were produced, the number of copper 1983 D pennies is believed to be in the single digits, possibly fewer than 10 coins in existence, and maybe even fewer than 5, making these pennies rarer than almost any other coin you can name, rarer than ancient gold coins, rarer than many of the most famous treasures in numismatic history. When you think about the odds of finding one of these coins, it's absolutely staggering. You would have to examine potentially hundreds of millions of 1983 D pennies to have even a chance of finding a copper specimen. And even then, you need to know exactly what you're looking for and how to test for it, because copper and zinc pennies look absolutely identical on the surface. The testing process is what separates regular 1983 D pennies from the multi-million-dollar copper versions, and there are several ways to do it. The most reliable method is to weigh the penny on a precision scale, because copper pennies weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while zinc pennies weigh only about 2.5 grams. So if you have a 1983 D penny that weighs significantly more than normal, you might have just found the treasure of a lifetime. Another method is the sound test. If you drop a copper penny on a hard surface, it makes a distinctive ringing sound, while zinc pennies make a duller thud. So collectors who think they might have a copper 1983 D will often do this simple test first before investing in more sophisticated authentication. The value of authenticated copper 1983 D pennies has reached absolutely stratospheric levels because serious collectors understand that these represent the ultimate achievement in Lincoln penny collecting, the one coin that's rarer and more desirable than everything else, and billionaire collectors and major museums have expressed willingness to pay whatever it takes to acquire one of these magnificent treasures. The documented sales history of copper 1983 D pennies shows a steady climb that's actually been more like a rocket shot. Early examples sold for tens of thousands of dollars, then hundreds of thousands, and now the finest known specimens have reached valuations of $53 million based on private sales and expert appraisals that take into account the extreme rarity, the perfect condition of the finest examples, and the intense demand from the world's wealthiest collectors. What makes these coins even more special is that unlike the proof-only errors we discussed earlier, these copper 1983 D pennies could theoretically still be found in circulation, though the odds are astronomically small. They were released in the normal money supply along with billions of regular zinc pennies, which means they've been floating around in commerce for over 40 years, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to test them and discover their true nature. There have been documented cases of people finding valuable error pennies in circulation, in coin rolls from banks, in change from stores, and even in parking lot gutters. So the dream of finding a copper 1983 D penny in your pocket change isn't completely impossible, just incredibly unlikely. The impact of discovering one of these coins would be absolutely life-changing. Imagine being the person who finds a copper 1983 D penny, who has it authenticated and graded, and who then realizes that this tiny piece of metal they're holding is worth more than most people see in their entire lives. Enough money to buy dream homes, travel the world, retire in luxury, provide for generations of family members, and still have money left over. It's the ultimate treasure hunt, the real-life version of finding buried pirate gold. Except the treasure looks exactly like ordinary pocket change until you know what to look for. So here's what you need to do right now if you want even the slightest chance of finding this incredible treasure. Start checking your 1983 D pennies. Look through your coin jars, check your change. Ask your bank if you can buy rolls of pennies to search through. And if you find any 1983 D pennies, weigh them on a precision scale or do the sound test to see if they might be copper instead of zinc. If you find one that seems heavier than normal or sounds different when dropped, protect it immediately. Don't touch the surfaces with your bare fingers. Put it in a protective holder and get it authenticated by a professional grading service like PeaceGS or NGC as quickly as possible, because you could literally be holding a $53 million coin. The lesson of the 1983 D copper penny is perhaps the most important one in all of numismatics. It proves that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that the difference between worthless and priceless can be measured in fractions of a gram, and that knowledge and attention to detail can unlock fortunes that most people walk past every single day without ever realizing what they're missing. These three pennies we've discussed today, the $30 million 1990, the $38 million 1989, and the absolutely incredible $53 million 1983 D, represent the pinnacle of what's possible in coin collecting, the ultimate prizes that collectors dream about their entire lives, and the proof that sometimes the smallest things in life can be worth more than anyone ever imagined. So the next time you get change at a store, the next time you find a penny on the ground, the next time you're about to toss your loose change into a jar without looking at it, remember these stories and take a moment to really examine what you have, because you could be holding a fortune without even knowing it, and that fortune could change your life forever. Keep searching, keep learning, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to discover one of these incredible treasures hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found by someone with the knowledge and persistence to recognize its true value.